Calling all authors, the Your Book, Your Voice podcast with host Robert A. Lane features everything you need to know about narrating your audiobook. But it doesn't stop there. We have special guests lined up from all aspects of the book publishing industry, and we also dive deep into what it takes to be mentally prepared for success as an author and in life. So please welcome your host, Robert A. Lane.
Hey, my friends, welcome to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. Glad you're here. I'm Robert A. Lane. I'm an audiobook coach and producer. I specialize in helping nonfiction authors turn their fantastic book into an audiobook that they, as the author, narrate themselves, because nobody can tell your story better than you. As a nonfiction author, this is your story. This is your personal and unique opportunity to spread your word, your voice in your own unique way. And the only way you can do that is when you narrate your own audiobook. And so I love what I do as an audiobook coach and producer. I have a business called Robert Lane Coaching, where I have an audiobook coaching program, which of course is called Your Book, Your Voice, and take you through the process of setting up your own recording space, teaching you the fine art of what it takes to do a great audiobook narration, and then of course getting you published on the AAA, Audible, Amazon, and Apple, and of course any other distribution platforms that work best for you. But today is another special day because we have a very special guest. And so I'd like to welcome to the podcast today Raylynn Van Oort. Raylynn is not only an author, because she just recently published her book, which is called From Shit to Sunshine. And it's ebook, paperback, hardcover, and yes, Raylynn did her book as an audiobook, and it sounds fantastic. So welcome to the show, Raylynn. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
You bet, Robert. Glad to be here.
Oh, I tell you, it's super exciting to have you share your story. And we're going to dive into your book and the journey that you share. It's a fabulous memoir, and of course, the way that you narrated your audiobook is just very compelling. And that is something that I just want to really emphasize to any author out there. If you're ever considering turning your book into an audiobook, you do have what it takes to do a great narration. You absolutely do. And Raylynn is proof. You definitely got to listen to her audiobook because it was done so well. Now, not only are you an author, Raylynn, but you're also a speaker. I know that you've been a disability advocate throughout your life and some of the work that you've done. You're a health coach as well. But most importantly, you are a hope hooker. And I love that. I love that term because, hey, folks, Raylynn is not a lady of the evening. She is a lady of the heart. And we're going to get into what that means. A matter of fact, you have a great little catchphrase, because I'm all about catchphrases too. So you have a great catchphrase that I think it's something like I like to hook people's hearts to hope, right? I like to hook people's hearts to hope.
Correct.
And I love that. It's a great summary of what you do and what you're about. So that's super exciting that we're going to be diving into all this. So you're in for a great treat. Now, before we get into your book and the journey that you share in your book, I know that you live in Montana. You actually grew up in Montana, but that's not where you were originally from. So can you let us know where were you born and what led you to living in Montana?
Wow. Well, I was born in San Diego, California, and so it was amazing that I began there. But unfortunately, my dad passed away. He was in the Navy, but he passed away when I was 2, and so we moved back to Montana, which is the state that my mom's family was from. So we moved back here, And I love Montana. It is actually my home. And, being here has been amazing because I was raised, after we got back, my mom, about a year later, married a rancher. And so we ended up moving out on a ranch. And so I was raised there for quite a few years with all the calves and the cows and the chickens and everything you can imagine. But it was an amazing thing. Other than we had some issues with an adopted dad, so that's kind of what led to some of the issues that have happened in my life. But that's where I grew up. And then I've been back and forth because of my story. I've been into North Dakota. I've been in a lot of different places, and ended up back in Montana about 15, 20 years ago after my sister passed away. So anyway, I love Montana, and I'm now living in the capital city, Helena, Montana. So.
Awesome. So what was it like to live on a ranch? I mean, it's we have our movie conception of what it's like, of ranch life, but also I know it's hard work. So just curious, what would a typical day be living on a ranch?
Well, summer and school time were a little different
Mm,
because, during school we had to hurry up and get the chores done and head out to the door and jump in the car and go to make sure we got to the bus on time, which was a couple miles away, as long as
mm,
there wasn't snow, because sometimes we got stuck and that was not good. But typical day on the ranch, like in the summertime when we were, young, we'd get up and we'd have to go down and milk the cows. I mean, everybody talks about milking cows. Well, I'd go milk cows and just squirt the cats, and they're loving all this, so, and so then we milk the cows, and then just, put them out, and take care of the calves that they lost their mothers, and feed them on a bottle, and gardening, and yet there was lots of time to play. Like my cousins and family would come out and stay on the ranch with us. Like 6 kids in a 1 bedroom. It's like
ah,
it was crazy. But we played outside all time, in the creek, everywhere. And of course, riding horses, we never got to ride a horse for fun because they had to work. So when we had to
mm,
go get cattle and get the calves and stuff, then we got to ride, and we'd go up the canyons all by ourselves, and find the calves, find the cows, and make sure that everything was okay. So those are the kind of things. And of course, we always had stuff happen with the animals, and things that you can imagine, pulling calves, and work never ends on the ranch. It's from morning till night. And I mean, the times that my adopted dad and grandma and grandpa would be out till wee hours in the morning because something happened to a cow, something happened to a horse, whatever it
mm.
might be. So pretty crazy life, but it was amazing. It was beautiful. So.
Oh, that's great. So you mentioned that it was roughly about a year when you moved back, when your family moved back to Montana, that your mom remarried. And so, what was it like with having a stepdad? What was that experience?
Wow. Well, I was 2 years old when my dad died. And so it was like, what happened to my dad? I had no clue. And then all of a sudden, we have a year later someone who was saying, I'm now your dad. Call me your dad. It was like, but what happened to my dad? And so my sister was older, so she really rebelled against that. But me,
Mm,
I was just like, I want a daddy. I want a daddy. So I did everything that he wanted me to do. And extremely controlling person. He didn't have it was all about him. I mean, we
mm,
basically he said jump and we said how high. And so the hardest part of that, though, Robert, was the fact that he took my dad away from me. My dad, Raymond, it was my namesake. I was named
mm,
after him. And he even wanted my name changed because it reflected my dad, Raymond. And at that point, he also took my grandparents away and my uncle that were on my dad's side, and said we couldn't even look at my dad's pictures anymore because we no longer belonged to him. And it's
mm,
like I didn't understand this. And so of course my sister and I would sneak find the pictures that my mom hid. but it was one of those things that was very painful because I never did really get to grieve my dad until years and years later. So that was a pretty tough thing. So
Yeah, that's again, it's suppressing an emotion, a feeling that can be very devastating, especially at a young age. What were what were some of the maybe first signs that I know now looking back, you can identify them, that maybe you were first starting to feel that sense of low self-esteem or self-worth or shame. Was there signs even at that young age that things were happening to you? As I say now, being able to look back, you can understand it, but as a little kid, it must be something that you didn't really realize or maybe understand. But can you remember back of any particular signs when those feelings started to occur?
well, I think, Robert, they actually started, not long after they got married. I was excited for my mom because
Mm,
she seemed happy, when they first got married. But then I always wanted to please him because I wanted the accolades. I wanted somebody to be proud of me, somebody to care about me, somebody to say that I was special. But we never got those kind of words. In fact, one that's actually in the book was a chapter about I was excited because I got picked to go help put the cows up on the forest. That's what we did, put them up, in the summertime to graze. And so I was excited. Me and my grandpa and my adopted dad Jeff would go, and I was, I am going to get such praise for this. He's going to think I'm just the best gate opener because I was supposed to open and close the gate. And then but then as we get up there, I'm opening and closing the gate on my horse. I know I'm doing great, and I can't wait to hear his pride, the pride that he would have in me. And then pretty soon he stops and he goes, "How many?" And I kind of look like, "What?" "Well, you've been counting, haven't you?" No. It's like, and my mind just raced back to, I don't ever remember you telling me
mm,
to count the cow, the cows and the calves. And then it's like, and he started calling me how stupid I was. It's like, how stupid could you be? We're going to lose all of our cattle. Well, I'm not going to know how many are going to be up on the forest to bring down. And he just berated me and berated me. And it's like this day that I was so excited about.
mm,
And it's kind of like I looked at my grandpa, like, say something, and my grandpa just I could just see in him the disgust in him, but he couldn't say anything because he was treated the same way that
mm,
the rest of us were. And so there was so much control, so much berating and putting me down. And so then on the way home, it was like, I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody, I don't count, I am so stupid. And I was raised that way. I thought I was the stupidest person in the world. I had no sense, but yet I end up valedictorian. Why? Because I had to be. There was no question. I had to be. And so because we were
mm.
trophies, my sister and I, we had to be the best. We had to be, who we, the best in the school. So anyway, there's a lot of that just came throughout the whole, the time I grew up. So
And how old were you with that whole incident with the horses?
I think I was about 10, maybe.
Mm.
8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. It's like I'm thinking back, like, what did I write in the book?
It's in the book,
Yeah,
folks.
it's in the book. So if you want to know if I'm telling the truth,
Yeah,
but yeah,
so what it sounds like, just from an outsider listening to your story and your experience, that to be the best, to be valedictorian, wasn't for you.
no,
And as you say, it was all about him getting praises for your hard work,
right.
is what it sounds like.
Oh, definitely, definitely. There was nothing short of an A that we could have because again, it would reflect on him. And he had, we'd moved from the ranch probably when I was in junior high,
Mm,
and then he became principal. He went to school, got his degree, and very charismatic person, extremely
mm,
charismatic. And so everyone in school, I thought, just adored him and loved him. He's such a great teacher. But yet, as soon as the doors closed when we went home, he turned into a totally different person. It was, do this, do that, cook my egg right. If you don't do it right, then start over again. And it was never good enough. And it was always that manipulation. And sometimes, like, we'd be playing cards and I'd put a card down and he'd look at me really funny, like, huh, that's exactly the card I wanted you to put down. And that's how I manipulated you into doing it. So thank you. And it was like, I mean, I can remember jumping up, throwing the cards all over the thing. So I'm not playing this anymore, because it's like, how can you just sit there and try to control me like that? But very few times did I buck up against it, because I was afraid. I was afraid that I wouldn't get the accolades. I wouldn't get somebody that loved me, that he wouldn't love me anymore. So, but that, if you define that as love, I'm not sure that's too good, you know?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
You are listening, by the way, to the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I do appreciate those of you tuning in. If you'd like to join in the conversation, you can. You can comment in the chat. You can also, give us a call. We have the phone number there on the screen for you to see it. And that number again is 866-451 1451. If you'd like to call in and ask Raylynn a question as she continues telling her story, especially as we get into her book, From Shit to Sunshine, which is a fantastic memoir. We're going to be diving more into that in just a second, but feel free to join us as we are streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. Now, Raylynn, so you were valedictorian, you graduated, did high school. Now what? How are you able to break free, or were you able to break free from the control of your stepdad?
Well, I went to college. I went to Montana State University, and that was like, woohoo, I can do whatever I want now because he's not around. But then it was always in the back of my mind, I have to be still, I still have to have straight A's. I still have to be the best. And when I would go home, I would have to be in the best shape, because, because there were sexual things that happened throughout the years that were not appropriate between an adopted dad and a daughter. And so, but he always told me, if you're fat, you're ugly. And so I'd go to school. And of course, as you get to school and you're drinking and partying and eating all the crap that they feed you in the dorms, then you gain weight. And so then I was afraid that that was going to create some issues. So of course, then I jump into, like a lot of the other girls, we're going to become bulimic and throw up. And then that way we won't get fat. And so then I did start a food addiction because of that when my grandma died, which was right at the time I went to college. And, because I was afraid. Well, in fact, this is a really interesting one, is when my grandma did die and I had to go to the funeral. I couldn't cry. He told me I could not cry. I had to sing at the funeral. And I couldn't cry. I had to be strong for him, because my sister and my mom, of course, were not strong enough for him. And so at the funeral, my mom and my sister were crying and crying. And so my sister was getting all this attention, and I'm sitting there and no one's talking to me. And I can remember looking at all of the food that the ladies from the church had brought. And I thought, well, I can just sit and eat. And so I filled my plate with cookies and candy and all the stuff that was so unhealthy. But boy, did it gave me endorphins. That was like, I don't have anybody helping me right now, so this will help. And so that began that slide into food addiction. And so when I go to college then, and because my adopted dad had told me, if you're fat, you're ugly, then I have to start into this bulimic place. And so anyway, I was there for like 3 years, and finally quit school because I wasn't succeeding like I knew that he would want me to be. And I left and went to Texas because to get away. Then I'm no longer under his thumb, but I'm still under his thumb here. And it's like everything that he said about me, how unworthy I felt. I wasn't worth anything within with what I was. And so, so much happened down there. I ended up meeting a guy, we get married, I have a daughter, we move back to Montana, we get divorced. I mean, all of the typical young things that happened in life. So then I became, a single mom raising my daughter by myself. So, a lot of that just swinging forward, all with the control always in my mind of having to be successful, having to be the best, having to
Mhm.
be perfect, and never measuring up. So,
Yeah, and these are all stories that you've shared in your book, From Shit to
mhm,
Sunshine. Again, it is
mhm.
available now as an ebook, as a paperback, as a hardcover, and of course, as an audiobook, which we really love. so,
Yes.
so that's really great. Let's talk about your book a little bit more in detail. The first thing that some people may not notice right away, but when you look at it a little more intently, you discover something about that cover that you have on your book. And the picture on the cover is actually upside down. And it's
Right.
funny because even when I glanced at your cover, I didn't notice it right away until I kind of stopped and went, wait a minute, the sun is shining from the bottom. And then I really looked at the cover of the book. I'm like, well, that is a very interesting creative choice. So what was the concept, the idea behind your book cover?
Well, it's interesting because it is a mountain from Montana that is
Ah,
on that front cover, of course, because I love the mountains. But turning it as on its side is kind of like when we walk through a lot of things in our life gets turned upside down. And
mm,
mine was turned upside down when I didn't even realize it was upside down. But then all of the crap, I'm saying crap because I'm being nice, even though I said shit on my title. But it's like when all of the crap of life begins to bury the stuff that's within inside of you. Now we have light within us. We are, the wonderful thing that we are born with. My belief in God. That's what I believe. But it was
mm,
buried. It was just covered with all the crap of the trauma that I walked through, especially as my life progressed. And so it's kind of like I wanted to show the darkness at the top, but
mm.
underneath there's always sunshine, always sunshine. And that's what we can all do. We can all wade through the crap of our life, but we can always find the sunshine if we are willing to do the work. So that's kind of, and besides that, I want people to look at it in a bookstore and go, wait a second, that upside down, they'll put it in their hand and turn it and it's in their hand, so they'll buy it, right?
Ah, you're a smart marketer. That's good. That's good. No, but it is it's a clever way of again
Mhm.
explaining basically what you just explained about the importance of why the cover is what it is. And was there a pivotal moment that sparked you to write the book in the first place? Was it just people telling you to do it, or what was the inspiration to say, you know what, I gotta put this book out. I gotta share my story because I feel it is that important to let the world hear my story because it hopefully will inspire and change people's lives. What was the pivotal moment that was like, all right, I'm writing this book?
Well, I honestly believe it was a divine inspiration. It was like this is something for me that my faith is extremely important. But I think, Robert, a lot of it was that hope in the midst of my journey that I have walked through so much stuff. I've walked through so much trauma, beatings, rape. I mean, you name it. There's been so much trauma in my past. And I didn't want to be defined by my trauma. And yet I
Mm,
sat at 280 pounds on oxygen and given 3 to 5 years to live, 5 or 6 years ago. And it was like, this is not who I want to be. This is not who I am in the essence of my being. And so through all of that, I thought everything I've walked through has been an opportunity. It's been an opportunity to understand myself and understand other people so that I have the empathy and understanding like a health coach. I mean, can I understand somebody who's sitting before me at 300 pounds, all upset because of where they're at? Of course I do. And so many times we uncover the stuff that's causing that. And so once I was able to pull myself out of the victim mentality, then it's
mm,
like, wait a second, there is hope. There is hope. Everyone has hope in their heart. It's innate within the soul of all of us. is having that hope to succeed, that hope to be loved, the hope to be inspired and cared for. And so I wanted to make sure that people could, I mean, for somebody like me that's coming out this kind of trauma, it's like anyone can come out then. It's like coming out on the other side and have the lightness, the brightness, the beauty of life. Have a life that's worth living rather than, like where I was at, sitting in a recliner on oxygen, dying. And now, and most of that was coming from inside because I hated myself. But then turning that around, I didn't have to allow anyone from my past that hurt me to still control me because now I'm the one in charge. So watch out.
Well, I have to tell you, the first image that literally just shot through my mind was that scene in Shawshank Redemption. Climbing or crawling through, what was it, 2 football fields, 3 football fields, I forget. Of shit,
Yeah,
basically, to
yeah.
get out on the other side, and that scene with Tim Robbins, outstretching his hands and being cleansed from all that crap, from everything, and it's a great visual, and that just hit me, it just hit in my mind,
Yeah.
but that's really really true. Now, in the chapter that opens your book basically is definitely another pivotal moment in your life, maybe one of the lowest moments of your life. I know that there are several things that you've gone through, but the first 3 words of that chapter are like, grab you right away. Let her go. And it's like, what is this? What is this about? And it's funny because you talk about being a valedictorian to getting arrested. So why did you open your memoir, your book, with this particular aspect of your life?
Whoa. Well, can I blame my editor for that?
Sure.
I'll blame Nadia. If you're listening, Nadia, I'm telling you. But I think, Robert, the most important thing is that was my biggest shame. Here I am, from valedictorian to ex-con. I mean, what a fall. I mean, I fell from graces here. And so for so many years, because that was 1996, and many people in my life had no clue that I had been in prison. And I had been there for almost 13 months for bad checks. And so it's like, clear back then. And I wanted to start there because so much shame was, and it's like, if you're going to continue reading my book and want to know what's going on, you're going to hit the crap first. It's like you're going to see who I am from day one in that story. And yet we started there also because that was the beginning of my freedom. The
Ah,
beginning. It's
yes.
ironically, be careful what you pray for, you might get it. And it truly was the beginning of my freedom from what I had been walking through with the cult. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. My very special guest is Raylynn Van Oort. We're talking about her book that has been recently published called From Shit to Sunshine. It's a fantastic memoir. And again, I like your approach of, I'm not playing the victim. Yes, I went through trauma. Yes, I had some really intense experiences. But the point of the book is to show people that there is hope, that you can get through even the toughest things that happen in your life. You can get through it. And I love that as being a very positive and inspirational way of approaching it, and not just only not really playing the victim, but like being a victim, or always focusing on the victim, or focusing on only the trauma, because there is, like you say, light at the end of the tunnel. There is sunshine. There is sunshine. Uh,
yeah.
Not only outside but within us. So I like the way that that you approach that. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We're going to talk more about Raylynn's book, From Shit to Sunshine. There's definitely a section of the book that is a pretty intense part of your life, and that's being pulled into this. I hate using the word. I don't know if I want to use that word.
Yeah.
But getting pulled into a group that wow, it's really intense. So we're going to talk about that and how you were able to break free, and that's the beauty of the story. So don't go away. We're streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And we're back on the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm your host, Robert A. Lane. My very special guest is Raylynn Van Oort, who's written a fantastic memoir called From Shit to Sunshine. We've been talking, and Raylynn's been sharing some stories so far that are in the book, so you get to read about it. But most importantly, you get to hear it because she did a great audiobook. We're going to talk about the audiobook experience a little bit later on. But let's dive back into the book. And I know that one of the biggest traumas that you dealt with was getting involved with a religious cult, and that's just something that I think a lot of people from the outside looking in don't really understand the power of fear, the power of brainwashing and what it really is and how it really affects somebody, because it's so easy to say, well, I mean, this happened and that happened and that happened. Why didn't you just walk away? Why didn't you just leave? And there's that aspect of it that we don't really understand. But let's start just a little from the beginning. So you meet this person, and how did you get involved with this person?
Well, I actually met him at McDonald's, if you can imagine. And about that time, I had an accident, and so I could no longer work my full-time job. So I'd started my own business, Professional Event Planners, and so I would take my daughter to McDonald's on Friday nights and be able to have her little fun time. And in walks this guy with his entourage. And he looked just like my cousin. It was like, oh my gosh. So I said something to him. I said, "You look just like my cousin," and said, about Bobby. And he goes, "Well, that's my cousin too." And I was like, "What?" So
Huh.
actually, we had a cousin in common. And so that
Mm.
drew us together. So we began talking. He was running for governor. And so through that whole thing, then it was like, my event planning might come into play here. So maybe I could, these guys obviously must have money if they're running for governor. Well, come to find out, nope. it was, a couple weeks later, he called and asked me to be his campaign manager, which I had never been, but
Hmm.
it wasn't for pay. It was, I got pulled into the ministry of things. And so his call as a prophet is what that's how he was running. He was a recovered alcoholic, drug addict, abuser, all of the negative stuff that he said qualified him actually then to help so many people. And so of course I fell into that category, and it's like I was going to get accolades for this. I was going to have pats on the back, and of course I could do this because I know how to plan events. So I became his campaign manager and just kept getting pulled and pulled and pulled. And he ran for governor and lost, ran for senator and lost, ran for president. Of course, we know where that one went. But through all of those political campaigns, then I was a point person for him, and I had validation from that. And so in that it was like but I still had to be really perfect. And he had the same charismatic aura that my adopted dad did. So I was drawn to that. And he was also very controlling, even though it wasn't in the beginning, it wasn't this extreme negative, but it was that demanding, commanding personality that I was used to. So it's like whatever he wanted, whatever he asked for, I did. And again, here I am doing what someone else wants me to do. And so through that, it was years of conditioning. And then things started, he was a prophet that morphed into a monster behind doors, and it became abusive. It became, I mean, the things that would happen were horrible. I mean, the beatings that I would endure, the brainwashing, and when all of the things you think about, all of these religious cult type things, deprivation of sleep, deprivation of eating. We'd be up all night long listening to him pounding and pounding and pounding these scriptures into our head. But of course, many of them were twisted. And again, part of the abuse, of course, was all of us being prepared for God's army. It's
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? And yet it was the fear that went along with that, Robert, was so horrendous. And it's in my book. I call it butt puckering fear. So it's like you can probably imagine what that might be like. But through the beatings and all of that, I didn't know how to not be there, because I was so conditioned to pleasing someone, to pleasing that demanding type personality. And so that's what I did for years, for
Yeah,
years.
there is a story or experience that you do share in your book about the time where his wife asked you to give her money for shopping or whatever she was going to use the money for, and you were specifically told by the prophet that
Mhm.
no one gets any funds without his approval, period. And so you told her no, and you explained to her why. And you made the right decision in your mind, of course, that you did exactly what he had asked. And as you go along, as you tell the story in the book and as you narrate it in your audiobook, it's just crazy because you really see the manipulation and the fear, where he first comes off, says, yeah, you listen, you did the right thing, and then he turns around and berates you for not giving money to his wife. So he completely goes against what he told you.
Mhm.
So I can see how the manipulation and the fear, because you never know
Mhm.
what you do. Is it the right thing? I did what he told me to, but now, was it the right thing? Because it just seems like whatever anybody did, he just twisted it in a way to, make a reason to,
Mhm.
again, instill fear, to be physically abusive, mentally abusive. And that's where I was able to understand more about that feeling of being trapped. Can you maybe expand on this?
Yes, it was. I mean, that was a great example of, ironically, that's when he was off his rocker. He had been taking drugs and alcohol because he's atoning, of course, because he's, of
Sure.
who he is. He's atoning for the alcoholics and drug addicts. And so he was taking all of these drugs and literally lost his mind. And he's up running around the Rimrocks and Billings. And we're like, what do we do now? Because this is our so-called prophet. This is our leader. What do we do? And she wanted money for food and for her kids. Well, of course, well, we all wanted that, but
Yeah.
we certainly can't take it. So I did what he wanted me to do. But then when he came back and it flipped, where, well, don't you ever deprive, like you said, and kapow, I just literally got sucker punched across the face. And it was like, now what? And this is the type of things that always happened. It's like we couldn't do it right. And he would always say that's the reason, because we'd try to second guess. And I'm really good at coming up with, like when I was an event planner, I have 5 different ways in case something goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
I can figure it out. That was my job. So I was good at figuring, okay, this way, this way, this way, this way. But then with him, I never got it right because he always picked the one that I didn't pick. And it was like, oh, yes, you're doing great. Oh, no, but now kapow. Then it was his reason, that I would get beat, or I would get berated, or I would get put in the shower, or, for hours and hours standing straight. It's like the things that happened were his way to keep us under his thumb. And of course, if we did any of this stuff and we didn't do what he said, we'd all go to hell. So it's like, well, that's not the option I want. So yeah. But fear was a monster. It was totally a monster.
And again, I know you opened your chapter with the moment when you got arrested for bad check writing, but that was the pivotal moment where uh, I know you've said about uh, freedom, about being
Right.
able to be free. Going to jail and I'm free. It's like, wait a minute, that's two clashing, concepts. How does that work? But now, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So you got to share this. I think it's a right, and I love it because it's part of your personality. So when bail was set, what did you say to the police officer?
Well, the guard came up and he was all upset, like, oh my gosh, Raylynn. And you have to remember, this is 1996. And it was for bad checks. I mean, I was not a murderer or anything like this. But he comes up and he said, they set your bail. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, $100,000. And I looked at him and I said, $100,000 is, I'm thinking, I have no one I know that has $100,000. And so I said to him, can I write a check? It's just like, oh, for goodness sakes, Raylynn, I can't believe you would say that. I was like, what is that? So it was like, I mean, it was just amazing the things that would happen in there, because the freedom that I had, because I had 3 meals a day. I had a bed to sleep in. I wasn't sleeping in a car. I wasn't sleeping on the floor. I actually had a bed to sleep in. And I had, it was like I was warm. Well, most of the time, it depended on the winter, but but I remember, I just have to tell you, this one was so funny, because I'm such a great con that the first day I got arrested, they had taken our car and there were kids with us. So they were going to separate our stuff. So the guy asked me, the guard came and got me and took me in the back where the cars were. He said, now take out the stuff that for the kids and for other people. And then so that we know what stuff. So I separated it out, and then I'm thinking, oh, well, we have snacks in here, and we have pens, and we have paper, and we have all these things. Well, I don't have them in my cell. So I had this jumpsuit on. And so I started shoving things down my jumpsuit. And pretty soon the whole thing just fell open and everything fell out. And he looked at me and just rolled his eyes like, oh my God, Raylynn, you can't even sneak anything into your cell. So he just turned his head. So I buttoned it back up and put everything back in, and away I went. I got everything anyway. So, yeah, pretty.
Oh, yeah. Well, the one thing that is a common theme in your book and in your audiobook is the fact that you are able to use humor to help you through some pretty tough times and some pretty tough experiences. And that has been a very valuable trait to be able to do that. That I feel gave you maybe a sense of strength. How do you? Well, we're gonna dive into that. I want to get your take on this. We do have to take one more quick break. Gosh, there's so much I want to talk to you about. The show's not long enough, but we do have to take a break. We are streaming live on the Bold Brave TV network. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. My very special guest is Raylynn Van Oort, who we're talking about her book From Shit to Sunshine, an incredible memoir of hope. Really is what it's about. Don't go away, my friends. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right, and we're back on the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm Robert A. Lane. My very special guest is Raylynn Van Oort. We've been talking about her memoir, From Shit to Sunshine, which is an incredible book. Boy, we've covered some pretty intense things, but the most important thing I think about your book is the fact that there is hope. There is hope. So can you tell us your journey? You've been arrested. You finally got out of prison, and how did you get back on a path to hope and recovery from this experience?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was arrested, I never saw the leader again. I never saw him ever again. I did talk with him, but again, the distance helped, and so I wasn't getting beat anymore. And all of that kind of thing was reducing, but I still had in my mind it was ministry. And then one day it was like that Saul to Paul moment where my eyes were just opened, and it was like, oh my goodness, this was a cult. This was not a ministry. And from that point on, and my family knew this, but me, I'm in the brainwashing because of the fear. And so as I began to move forward, I couldn't find a therapist. And so finally I did through some things that I went through, but I found a therapist to help me deal with the aspect of the brainwashing, because religious brainwashing is extremely hard to deal with because it goes to the core of who we are, especially those that have faith like I did. I believe in the Lord. And it's like it twisted that. And so I had to find somebody that was going to help me untwist that. So in the midst of that, I went through 5 years of therapy. I met a great guy, my husband, that really is an amazing man that helped walk me through this. But then I also had a lot of health problems because of the trauma. Your body keeps the score. Trauma goes to your body. Through that, I was at 280 pounds on oxygen, given 3 to 5 years to live. And finally, my daughter became my health coach. I lost 130 pounds, got off oxygen, got healthy. So all of these years went together, Robert, with therapy, changing my mindset, helping me become free of that fear, and to become who I am, and to realize that I am worth something. I don't have to do it based on what somebody else thinks of me or what I do or don't do. The essence of me is good. And that's where hope lies, is deep within you. And so through that process of health, getting better health-wise, and then finally working really hard to have a better understanding of my own faith, because God literally came and pulled me out of hell. When I came out of prison, it was like, what in the world? Here I am, an ex-con to a valedictorian to ex-con. And so to be able to walk through that now with freedom, because these were all opportunities that God gave me to help others. In the midst of every jail cell I was in, I was able to give people hope. After I got breast cancer last year, I was able to give people hope in the cancer ward. I mean, it's like, you just have to realize that everything that we walk through has a purpose. There is pain in the purpose, or purpose in the pain. Let's turn it the right way. And so in that's where hope lies. And so I have wanted so badly for all of the trauma and crap that I walk through. It's fertilizer, remember? Crap turns to fertilizer. So I'm growing my flowers and growing my fun stuff in life. And so through that, I want people to uncover the crap in their heart so that they can grow and become and have a life, not based on who they have been because of someone else, or how you've been treated by someone, or who you think you were in that negative space. It's like, we can rise up and we can become who we want to be. And we don't have to be controlled. We get to live in a life of abundance. And I don't mean money. Yeah, if you have money, that's great. But abundance in joy and happiness. And my sense of humor, that's where my joy, it says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I know that's exactly why. But anyway, through that whole journey, I've come full circle. Now I'm a health coach, I'm a speaker, author, and audiobook person. And so through it all, it's been a journey of 30 years of healing. But boy, today, I am so grateful for what I've walked through, because everything was an opportunity to grow. So anyway.
I love it. I love it. And just real quickly, when you recorded your audiobook, what was that experience like? And how did you keep yourself from being re-triggered from these past experiences as you were doing your audiobook?
I prayed a lot. I did. but really and truly, it showed me that it's like, I honestly wanted to feel the emotion, Robert, because you taught me that, is that I can't just get on there and say, okay, 7 years ago. I mean, it's like, I am the only one that could tell my story. And I was asking you, can't you get somebody else to do this for me? I can't do this. But because of your coaching, and because who you are to bring out from within me the good and the confidence in this area, then it was like, yes, no one else can feel the emotions. Like when I'm getting beat or this is happening, nobody else is going to feel that fear but me. And no one can project it like me. So you taught me that. And so the process of what you did in helping me do that, and all the editing and the fixes and the stuff, it was amazing. I mean, I love it now, because for the rest of eternity, then I have a legacy for my family. That my voice is telling my story. It's not just reading it in my book. It's hearing my voice, things that we never had from my mom and other people. I mean, the snippets of things I have from my mom and grandparents are so small. But now they're going to, my family and my friends and whoever reads my book is going to have it forever, as long as their Audible works or their app, wherever it's at. But truly, I am so grateful that I was sent to you and you coached me in this, because I kind of went off topic a little bit, but I really realized through this process that there was only 2 times that I was triggered. Only 2 times. The rest of it was emotion of what I've walked through. But the triggers, that shows healing. And that's what amazing to me, is that because I have done all the doggone work ahead of time, I dug it out, I dug out the crap, then it shows me that I was healed in two places. My husband goes, "You're either stressed or you're triggered." It's like, well, I'm being kind of cranky, I guess. But in that, it's like, being able to do that was such a gift. I mean, what you gave me and helped me with, Robert, is such a gift. So I thank you for that. So
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That makes me feel good as a, as a coach and audiobook producer. To hear that from an author that I've been able to help, and so that's my reward. Is seeing you create something fantastic. So again, from shit to sunshine, this incredible memoir. You got to get this book. It's on Amazon. You can get the ebook, paperback, hardcover, and of course, get the audiobook because you really want to hear Raylynn tell her story in her own voice. So grab it. We only have a quick minute left. Can you give us people, if the people want to get in touch with you, maybe talk to you about health coaching or
yeah.
about your book? How can they get in touch with you?
They can go to Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, just Raylynn Van Oort. Or you can email me at Raylynn Van Oort, RaylynNVanOort @gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from people and see, especially if you read my book and it's done anything for you or listen
Yes.
to the book mainly. So.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for joining the podcast today, Raylynn. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
And thanks, Robert. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. This is the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. Again, as I end every podcast, when you're out and about in the world, smile at a stranger, say hello to them, give them a compliment, because that small gesture of kindness can make the world a difference in somebody's life. So be a life changer. We'll be talking to you on the next edition of the Your Book, Your Voice podcast. I'm Robert A. Lane. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Take care, my friends.
Bye-bye.
This has been Your Book, Your Voice with host Robert A. Lane. Tune in each week for another powerful and informative episode of Your Book, Your Voice, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.